My ex-husband, who thought I was infertile, left me 15 years ago. When he ran into me and saw my son, he trembled. That chance encounter was just the beginning of a tumultuous journey, where old secrets resurfaced and hidden truths came to light, challenging everything he believed about the past, the present, and the future. On a sunny afternoon, Catherine was sitting alone at a restaurant table near the window, looking out and admiring the beautiful day while she waited for the waiter who would soon bring her lunch. Catherine could not have imagined the surprising encounter she was about to have. As she got up to go to the restroom, Catherine accidentally bumped into a boy walking down the aisle. She quickly apologized to the boy, but when she looked at the man accompanying him, Catherine was shocked to see someone from her past. The man was Michel, Catherine's ex-husband, whom she hadn't seen in the 15 years since their divorce. A little taken aback by the sudden meeting, Catherine felt a mixture of surprise and discomfort spread through her body as he approached, but she maintained her composure and greeted him politely. Michel and Catherine had dreamed of having children, and from the beginning of their marriage, the couple had been trying to conceive, but without success. The years passed, and the precious dream of becoming a parent remained distant. Catherine, worried there might be a reason behind it, insisted to Michel that it would be best for both of them to see a doctor to try to understand the reason for this difficulty in conceiving and perhaps try some treatment. Michel, however, being proud, refused to go. Coming from a large family, he presumed the problem lay with Catherine, considering his own family history in contrast to hers, as she was an only child. Using their family backgrounds as a reference, he began to accuse her of being infertile, further aggravating the frustrations and misunderstandings between the couple, until the bitterness inevitably led to divorce. Despite the scars still present from the past, Catherine decided to greet Michel courteously, understanding that time had passed since they last saw each other. However, her attitude contrasted with the cold and disdainful reaction Michel showed upon seeing her again after so long. "You're alone, still single, I see," Michel said. His words dripped with arrogance, while his eyes reflected a mixture of superiority and indifference toward Catherine. With a gesture that hinted at his need to assert his supposed superiority, he introduced the young man by his side. "This is my son, Augustine," he proclaimed as if to emphasize a personal achievement. "He's a real genius, just like my new wife, Sophie," he added, nodding toward a woman sitting at another table, a trace of pride in his voice as he spoke of his new family. Catherine couldn't contain her disbelief at Michel's arrogance. After so many years, she had hoped things might have changed between them, but seeing him behave in the same way, she realized he was still as proud as ever. However, Michel would soon be surprised by something that could forever change the course of his story, and the fate of his entire family. As they were talking, a tall and affectionate young man approached Catherine. Seeing the discomfort on her face, the boy, with a protective and loving instinct, asked, "Is everything all right, Mom?" Catherine smiled warmly upon seeing her son and replied, "Of course, my son, I'm glad you're here. I was waiting for you and ended up running into an old acquaintance." She gave her son a loving kiss on the cheek, reciprocating his care. "Michel, I wanted to introduce you to my son," Catherine continued, smiling as she noticed the surprise on Michel's face. "This is Nathan." However, Michel couldn't hide his shock upon learning that Catherine had a son. His eyes widened slightly, revealing a whirlwind of thoughts racing through his mind as he realized the boy was already a grown teenager of about 15. Before Michel could articulate a single word, the waiter arrived with Catherine's lunch, interrupting the encounter. Catherine, taking the opportunity, excused herself and went to sit with her son, leaving Michel alone with his unexpected thoughts. Michel returned to his table with his son and his wife, but his mind was elsewhere. While Sophie and Augustine enjoyed their meals, Michel seemed distant. His thoughts wandered far away. His hand trembled, gripped by the idea swirling in his mind. Could Nathan be his son? Was it possible that Catherine was pregnant when they separated and never told him the truth? But why would she hide it from him? These questions tormented Michel, clouding his ability to enjoy the moment. Before he could find answers to his worries, his train of thought was abruptly interrupted by Sophie, who called his name, bringing him back to immediate reality. The days grew long, and Michel couldn't get the subject out of his head. He was afraid to seek the truth that tormented him so much. How would Sophie react to discovering he had a son from his previous marriage? And what would happen with Augustine? How would he feel knowing he had an older brother? Just the thought of confronting Catherine, fearing she might come to demand financial support, added a new layer of anxiety to his dilemma. But despite all the uncertainties and doubts swirling in his mind, Michel couldn't ignore the insatiable curiosity that drove him to discover the truth. How could this have happened? Michel asked himself endlessly. He was convinced that Catherine was sterile, especially after several years of failed attempts to conceive a child together. Michel's story with Sophie had been so different. A few years after the divorce, he met Sophie, and a short time into their relationship, she became pregnant with Augustine. Upon hearing the news of the pregnancy, they quickly decided to marry, building a new life together. These paradoxical circumstances only fueled Michel's doubts and bewilderment about the possibility of Nathan being his son. Michel found himself in a great internal dilemma. On one hand, he longed for the truth, but he feared the chaos that could be unleashed in his life if he discovered that Nathan was his son. His pride urged him to maintain the illusion of a perfect life with Sophie and Augustine, convincing himself that the presence of Nathan and Catherine would only bring turmoil and disorder. However, Catherine's persistent silence on the matter intrigued him more and more. Why would she be hiding Nathan from him? This mystery awakened his curiosity and fed his doubts. Meanwhile, Sophie began to notice her husband's distant behavior. Michel always seemed to be lost in his thoughts, and it worried her. She decided to confront him, determined to find out what was bothering him. With no way out and unable to hide his concerns any longer, Michel finally decided to share his suspicions and thoughts with his wife. Sophie was surprised to hear Michel's concerns. Her eyes widened slightly, reflecting disbelief and apprehension at her husband's revelations. "You think Nathan could be your son?" she questioned, her voice filled with surprise and incredulity. Michel took a deep breath, gathering the courage to admit his suspicion. "Yes, I think it's a possibility," he confessed, his voice full of uncertainty. Sophie frowned with worry. "But Michel, this could unleash a huge upheaval in our lives. Do you really think it's a good idea to seek this truth?" she asked, her apprehension evident in her voice. Michel nodded, determined. "I need to know, Sophie. If Catherine won't tell me the truth, then I'll seek a DNA test," he declared firmly, his decision already made. "No, Michel, you shouldn't do that," Sophie said with a touch of desperation in her voice. "We shouldn't get involved with them," she argued, trying to dissuade her husband. "Let's leave the past in the past and move on with our lives." Sophie did everything she could to dissuade her husband from the idea of seeking the truth, believing it would be better to leave the past behind. She thought she had convinced him, but Michel remained determined to find out the truth. So, against Sophie's wishes, Michel decided to contact Catherine and ask to meet. Catherine was surprised to be contacted by him. After their encounter at the restaurant, she thought she would never see him again. Remembering her ex-husband's arrogance, she initially refused the invitation. However, Michel's insistence eventually convinced her to give in, albeit reluctantly. "Catherine, I have something very important to discuss," Michel began with a bit of hesitation. "It's been on my mind since we met at the restaurant that day. I've been thinking about it a lot lately, and I want to know the truth," he affirmed firmly. "What's going on? What is this about?" Catherine inquired. "You know very well what I'm talking about," Michel retorted. "I'm talking about Nathan. If he is my son, I have a right to know," he exclaimed. "Ah, so that's it," Catherine laughed. "That explains your surprise at the restaurant. What are you laughing at?" Michel bellowed. "I have a right to know the truth." "No, Nathan is not your son," Catherine stated. Indignant at Catherine's dismissive response, Michel was not satisfied with her statement and continued to question her. "Whose son could he be then?" Michel asked. "You're single with a 15-year-old son. He must be my son. I don't know how it was possible. You were infertile." "You always jump to your own conclusions," Catherine said, outraged by Michel's words. "Nathan is not your son, I've already said it. He is Gregory's son, my husband." Michel was stunned, and Catherine continued. "Nathan isn't 15 years old. He's as tall as my husband, but he is still about to turn 14. "There's no possibility he's your son," Catherine affirmed. "When we separated, I sought medical help to try to understand why I couldn't have children and maybe start a treatment," she continued. "But the doctors said there was nothing wrong with me, that I was perfectly healthy and that, in fact, I could get pregnant. And that's what happened. As soon as Gregory and I got married, I became pregnant with Nathan. And after him we had 2 more boys, Evan, who is 10, and Theo, who is 7. After the confrontation with Catherine and the revelation that Nathan was not his son, Michel was deeply intrigued and disturbed. Catherine's words made him question everything he believed about his own fertility and the dynamics of his relationship with Sophie. Angry and confused, Michel tried to understand how he, coming from such a large family, had only 1 child with Sophie, while Catherine, whom he believed to be infertile, had 3 children with her husband. Michel finally decided to follow Catherine's advice and consult a doctor. Sophie, who thought she had convinced her husband to leave all this in the past, had no idea what Michel was doing, and he couldn't imagine what he was about to discover. The medical tests brought a revelation that shook Michel to his core. He was sterile. This truth unleashed a flood of questions about his marriage to Sophie. How could he have had a child with her if he was sterile? This new information cast a shadow over the very foundations of their relationship. For a time, Michel submerged himself in deep reflection, pondering the meaning of this revelation and the impact it would have on his life and his marriage to Sophie. He found himself confronted with the need to redefine his identity and his role as a husband and father amidst this painful discovery. Upon confronting Sophie, Michel was devastated to discover the truth about Augustine. She confessed that during the early stages of their relationship, she had a brief affair with another man, from which she became pregnant with Augustine. The revelation left Michel completely shattered, feeling as if his entire life had collapsed before him. His pride and belief in his own fertility had blinded him to the truth for so long. Now he faced a new reality, one that challenged all his notions about his marriage and his identity as a father. Now Michel would have to learn to live with this new discovery. He was faced with the difficult task of rebuilding his relationship with Sophie from this shaken foundation of trust. Furthermore, he would have to face the challenge of dealing with his emotions toward Augustine, knowing he was not his biological son but still loving him as his own. This revelation changed everything for Michel, but he knew he would have to find a way to move forward and rebuild his life from this new truth. In this story, we see that the truth, however difficult, is essential for building healthy and lasting relationships. Honesty with oneself and with others is crucial for cultivating mutual trust and respect. Furthermore, this story also reminds us of the importance of confronting our own prejudices and pride, as they can blind us to reality and prevent us from seeing the people around us as they truly are. Have you ever been in a situation where the discovery of the truth completely changed your perspective on something or someone in your life? If you liked the story, please leave a like and subscribe to the channel. Also, leave a comment with a rating from 1 to 5 to show how much you liked the story. Also, watch the video appearing on your screen now. See you soon.